Chris Bowen, the Energy Minister and Minister for Emissions Reductions, has made a complete fool of himself on the Parliament floor. I almost can't believe what the man said. I'm going to play you the video and give you my thoughts and comments on it in just a moment.
This Parliament does have an opportunity in this coming period to implement very important reforms. Welcome back to Australia. Welcome back after your successful movie tour of Japan, Mr Speaker. I recommend these movies to honourable members. Nuclear, what we can learn from Hiroshima, and the sequel. Nuclear, what we can learn from Fukushima, Mr Speaker. They're all-time classics from the honourable member opposite. And Mr Speaker, the member for Chisholm asked me about the opportunity and the necessity of reducing emissions from our large industrial emitters. And we have the opportunity. If you're going to write a note, you have to do it in Texter. You have to do it in Texter. Nobody can see that.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, you may have picked that up, but you've got there the Energy Minister putting forward an argument against the rolling out of nuclear energy using the example of Hiroshima, which was, of course, the United States bombing of a Japanese city in World War II. Okay, so how on earth is the nuclear bombing of a city during a war in any way an argument against the rolling out of nuclear energy here in Australia? Does the minister have any idea what he's talking about, ladies and gentlemen? Has Chris Bowen bothered to actually learn about the events from World War II? Is he ignorant? Is he making these statements on purpose? I'm scratching my head here, ladies and gentlemen, thinking, how can a man be so ignorant to use an example of a city that was bombed for the purpose of an argument against the rolling out of nuclear energy? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, ladies and gentlemen. So now, of course, Chris Bowen there clearly using the floor of Parliament as a circus, just putting on some sort of really strange and bizarre theatrical performance. You can see his colleagues in the back laughing, chuckling. It's just all one big joke. One big joke for the Energy Minister there, ladies and gentlemen, whilst millions of Australians are suffering under the increases to the cost of living, which includes the increases to our energy bills. What do you think that's all about? So let me just show you a few bits and pieces right here. So regulated power prices set to surge at least 20% this winter as energy bill reprieve ends. Okay, all just one big joke to the Energy Minister there, ladies and gentlemen. So let's talk about nuclear energy for a moment, because I feel that a lot of the myths need to be dispelled and debunked, and nuclear is not a dirty word. So me personally, I support nuclear energy, especially considering the fact that Australia has the most plentiful uranium reserves in the world, and we already store nuclear waste right here at home from France. So we mine it, we have it, we store it. It makes no sense that we don't utilize this energy, which is very environmentally friendly, very safe, very cheap, and very reliable. Why don't we use it? We could transform our industry if we only, shook the stigma that's held by some people who work within the walls of our parliament. So anyway, let's talk about nuclear energy and get used to this word, ladies and gentlemen, because it's a word that should be spoken around the dinner tables of every home in Australia. Everybody should be in favour of this energy. That's right. So nuclear power in the world today. I'm going to read to you here, and this is coming from worldnuclear.org. The first commercial nuclear power station started operation in the 1950s. Nuclear energy now provides about 10% of the world's electricity from about 440 power reactors. Think about that. Only 440 reactors providing 10% of energy in the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is called bang for buck. And I promise I'm not sponsored by the nuclear industry, just so you know. All right, so nuclear is the world's second largest source of low carbon power. All right, so all the greenies, all the environmentalists should be jumping for joy over the prospect of bringing this energy to Australia. It goes on to say, over 50 countries utilize nuclear energy in about 220 research reactors. In addition to research, these reactors are used for the production of medical and industrial isotopes, as well as for training. It goes on to say, civil nuclear power can now boast more than 18,000 reactor years of experience, and nuclear power plants are operational in 32 countries worldwide. All right, so power plants operational in 32 countries, yet a total of 50 countries benefiting from this power. What do you think that says? Now, the devil's advocate is saying, well, what if there's an accident? It's so dangerous. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what perhaps some people don't understand, especially in the case of Minister Bowen, is that there has not been a serious accident for more than 10 years. That's right. So let's have a bit of a talk about when the last one was. All right, so 2011, more than 10 years ago, one person was killed or injured in France after an explosion. Of course, that same year earlier on was Fukushima in Japan, whereby the disaster there at the nuclear power plant was triggered by a tsunami. That's right. So every time there has been one of these accidents, what you tend to see is the industry developing in leaps and bounds in terms of safety and precautionary measures. It's one of the safest energy production methods really going around. So 2021, and Bowen referenced that in addition to Hiroshima, just utterly distasteful, a disgusting statement for especially a minister to make on the floor of Parliament. I can't believe it. So that was a total of 4 people that died. So 1 died plus 3 labour accidents, and plus a broader number of primary ill or elderly people from evacuation stress. All right, so these problems coming about after the tsunami. I'm going to read to you here. The Fukushima nuclear disaster was triggered by a tsunami that flooded and damaged the 3 active reactors at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, drowning 2 workers. All right, so more than 10 years ago. Moving along here. As I mentioned before, here in Australia, we are absolutely silly to not be utilising our uranium. We have the number 1 largest reserves in the world. And as I mentioned before, we actually store France's waste, and we're basically just copying the most expensive power prices in the world right now. So we should have the lowest energy prices in the world. We should have the most plentiful, yet we have among the most expensive. All right. Now, the reason for this can be 100% attributed to a complete failure in governance in our country. It's not a failure of the natural resources landscape, all right? We've got all the natural resources. We're the envy of the world. We ship our uranium overseas. We don't utilize it for ourselves. So, ladies and gentlemen, what needs to happen in this instance? What needs to happen? Well, the only thing that needs to happen is for a change of government. That's right. So, get involved in your local political parties. Stand for parliament yourself. Get involved in politics. Things are only going to change in this country once the policy makers change. All right, we need to throw away the stigma attached to nuclear energy. All right, it is not a bad thing. It is a good thing. Okay, there's been just a handful of serious accidents throughout history. We've got 32 countries producing this energy, 50 countries using it, cheap, reliable, plentiful. We need it. And keep in mind that the greatest determining factor that brings about poverty is a lack of cheap, affordable, and reliable energy. We do not want to go down that path in Australia. So guys, get behind nuclear energy. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. To make sure you never miss an episode, sign up at mcjreport.com. Catch you on the next one.